house built on a rock will withstand floods and winds, while a house built on a sandy foundation will not stand. Building on a firm foundation is the key to success in any area of life. Since abortion was legalized in 1973, over 50 million abortions have taken place in the United States. Born in 1991, I am a survivor of the abortion holocaust that has taken the lives of over 1/3 of my generation. As we face this modern genocide in our own country, what has our strategy been to stop the slaughter of the innocent? To answer this question, I will show you the need for change in our pro-life political strategy and persuade you to stand steadfast for the unborn. First, we'll learn what legal positivism is and what its effects have been on the pro-life community. After that, we'll see how compromise has led to the erosion of personhood for the unborn in today's society. And finally, we'll determine the influence these ideas had on the Gonzales v. Carhart partial birth abortion movement. In 1941, a Nazi justice executed a Jew for the crime of hoarding eggs. At the Nuremberg trials, he pleaded not guilty to crimes against humanity, saying that his judicial duty had forced him to uphold Germany's legal precedent, and that he only reluctantly upheld the law. However, Allied judges found him guilty on the basis of higher law, that regardless of the laws in a country, a judge is still obligated to protect the innocent. More than 60 years later, the Nazi Minister of Justice's defense is still alive and well in the philosophy of law called legal positivism, which is the claim that all legal truth is based on the decision of the state. This puts the state in the position of determining right and wrong based on its own ethical notions. In other words, legal positivism is the equivalent of moral relativism in the courtroom. Ultimately, legal positivism and moral relativism boil down to outright humanism. These philosophies are dangerous because they leave the determination of truth to the whims of individuals and relegate justice to upholding the law regardless of its morality. Unfortunately, legal positivism has infiltrated the American legal system and the pro-life movement's political strategy as well. The most recently appointed justice to the Supreme Court, Samuel Alito, was supported by many conservative pro-lifers. Without looking at his previous judicial record, it might seem that this man could be a good addition to the Supreme Court. However, as we look at his past rulings, we see that this is not the case. In 1997, he said he could find no legal protection for an unborn child as a victim of medical malpractice. Because we have taught our Christian judges to simply uphold the law, Alito voted to keep partial birth abortion legal in New Jersey in 2000 for process reasons. For the past 25 years, we have accepted legal positivism by appointing justices that declare to be pro-life, but hold legal precedent above right and wrong. Our Christian strategy should be to teach these justices to do what is morally right rather than just uphold the law. Because we have a higher obligation to God's law than to man's law, we must always strive to protect innocent human life. Now that we've learned how to identify and defeat this philosophy of legal positivism, let's look at the current pro-life strategy to restrict abortion in the United States. Last year, I stood in the Colorado Supreme Court chambers where 40 years earlier, America's first permissive abortion law was passed, legalizing abortions in the cases of rape and incest. This opened the floodgates for pro-abortion legislation by undermining the personhood of the unborn. You see, when a child can be killed for his father's sins, the end result is that the personhood of that child is destroyed. Justice Blackmun wrote in his Roe v. Wade decision that if personhood is established, the case for abortion collapses, for the fetus's right to life would then be guaranteed. Today, the pro-life movement has collectively denied personhood to the unborn by passing compromising pro-life laws that effectively end in, and then you can kill the baby. For example, an Indiana law passed by pro-life action groups states that abortion shall in all instances be a criminal act, except when the woman submitting to the abortion has filed her consent with the physician. Instead of being a righteous statute, the law went on to give exceptions to say that when the right hoops are jumped through, in this case, when a woman signs her name on a bureaucratic form, it's okay to kill a baby. Instead of incrementally working to ban abortion, our pro-life laws have been reduced to regulating murder. Even if Roe v. Wade were overturned, this law would still be the ruling precedent in the state of Indiana. Tragically, the pro-life movement has passed hundreds of such laws in states across the country that bury the personhood of the unborn and further entrench abortion into our culture. How long will it take us to dig ourselves out of the hole that our own pro-life laws have put us in? How many millions will have to die because we have accepted such compromises on God's enduring command, "Thou shalt not murder"? Standing firm on the personhood of the unborn is the foundation needed to mount a solid defense against the slaughter of the innocent. It is paramount that we refuse to compromise on murder to reach a political end. Now that we've seen how personhood has been denied to the unborn and our current judicial system's commitment to legal positivism, I'd like to examine their effects on the April 2007 partial birth abortion ruling. After 15 years and $250 million raised by the pro-life industry, the partial birth abortion ban was upheld by the United States Supreme Court. It has been praised as a ruling that bans all late-term abortions and upholds the personhood of the unborn. But the pro-life community has been misled again. Because the justices hold legal precedent above right and wrong, they do not uphold a child's God-given right to life, but rather regulate abortion under the U.S. Constitution's Commerce Clause. Underlining their opinions on the baby's non-personhood, they remark approvingly that the ban refers to the baby as a fetus rather than a child, and callously compare revulsion towards partial birth abortion to the reaction one might have towards any other medical procedure. But far worse is the fact that the ban itself will not prevent a single abortion. The justices themselves wrote in their ruling that the question is whether the act imposes a substantial obstacle to late-term abortion. The act does not, on its face, impose a substantial obstacle. They optimistically suggest that the medical profession should find different and less shocking methods to abort the fetus. The ruling further states that if a baby's arm or leg comes out during the late-term abortion procedure, it is still legal to murder the child as long as the baby's belly button has not yet come out of the mother. In other words, an abortionist can still perform a textbook partial birth abortion as long as his intent was to stop the baby before the belly button. Of course, an abortionist would have few witnesses to this and could claim any intent, virtually nullifying any effect the ban might have had. Attempting to regulate a certain method of killing kids won't stop abortions. Imagine if the pro-life community in Nazi Germany worked to outlaw the use of poison gas Zyklon A to kill Jews. Suppose then they held the ruling as a victory while the Nazis continued to murder Jews with Zyklon B. Due to misinformation and lies fed to the pro-life community, this same scenario has happened today in our own country. I hope that recognizing this travesty for what it is will help the pro-life community to see that even its so-called victories are not always as they seem. Today we have learned how the doctrine of legal positivism puts the state in the place of God to determine morality, and how we can overcome this philosophy by always doing what is right. After that, we saw how even our own pro-life laws have compromised and undermined the personhood of the unborn. Finally, the partial birth abortion ban's tragic impact on our society demonstrates the need for change in our pro-life political strategy. Remember the parable of the wise man who built his house upon a rock. We must ask ourselves how we can build our pro-life strategy upon that rock. We can do this by only endorsing candidates that refuse to compromise on the murder of a single innocent child. We can uphold the personhood of the unborn by supporting legal measures such as human life amendments to establish and protect the personhood of the unborn. Finally, we must rally behind strong pro-life organizations that are dedicated to this strategy, such as American Right to Life. Together, we can recast the pro-life strategy on a firm foundation that will ultimately be successful at stopping this Holocaust. I urge you to stand steadfast for the unborn by building on a rock that cannot be shaken. That rock is Jesus Christ and his truth. Someday we will answer to him for the actions we took during the time of the worst genocide on earth. By resolving ourselves to defend the innocent, we can win this battle, and someday hear those sweet words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." I'll see each of you on the battlefield.